There is nothing you can do that I cannot simply deny. Ertai, Wizard Adept. Flavor text of Dismiss. Though it may be hard to believe, the Tolarian Academy, founded by Urza, was more than just a staging ground for his various experiments and genetic programs. This establishment was also a school, a place of learning where gifted individuals from across Dominaria would understand the intricacies of magic, becoming great scholars and wizards in their own right. The Academy would be the place where many famous individuals from Dominaria's history would receive education, such as the Time Mage, Teferi, the immortal Joyra, and a prodigy with few equals, the young adept, Ertai. When the captain of the Weatherlight, Sisse, was kidnapped by the forces of Phyrexia and taken to the Plane of Wrath, Tahngarth the Minotaur set out raising a crew in order to strike out on a rescue mission. Former crewmates were brought back on board, and the crew fleshed out well, but a critical position was still empty. A talented mage was needed in order to properly maintain the plane-shifting capabilities of the Weatherlight, and nobody that qualified was currently on the crew. Hannah, the daughter of the Tolarian headmaster Barin, nominated her father to take on the role, and the Weatherlight took off to the island. Barin, however, refused the position, instead offering up his pupil Ertai for the task. At 19 years old, Ertai was a young but incredibly gifted mage. He had learned a great deal in his time at the Academy, and with knowledge came pride. Barin's student was arrogant, eager to prove his superiority to others, yet was also untested. Hana was skeptical of Ertai's abilities, and so the two engaged in a brief mock duel, with Ertai prevailing with relative ease. And so, he was accepted onto the crew, where he would prove to be an abrasive individual, thanks to his own prideful nature. Not long after the Weatherlight entered the Plane of Wrath, the crew found themselves under attack by the Predator, the flagship of Volrath. A fierce battle broke out. Members of the crew were taken captive, and the ship was damaged in the fighting. But the Weatherlight was able to survive. The plane-shifting engine of the Weatherlight was one casualty of the conflict, being greatly damaged in the fighting. Without it, the crew had no way of returning to Dominaria. Fortunately, however, they were able to find a planar portal on Wrath, though it seemed erratic and non-functioning. Ertai volunteered to stay behind and work on opening up the portal while the crew continued their rescue mission. While he was studying the runes, however, Ertai found himself being pulled into a shadowy void, a space between planes, by the Sultari Lina. Surprised, Ertai returned the favor by pulling the shadowy Sultari into the physical world of Wrath, where the mage was offered a deal. The Sultari wished to flee Wrath, and Lina, their emissary, offered to assist Ertai with opening the portal, under the condition that her people would be allowed to flee aboard the Weatherlight. Ertai saw no reason to refuse this bargain, and so they got to work, weaving the arcane rituals necessary to rip open the portal. Not long after, the pair succeeded, and the portal was opened. Lina departed to gather her people and inform the Weatherlight, which then raced towards the portal. However, the Weatherlight was not alone. It was being pursued once again by the Predator, and speed was of the utmost necessity. Ertai held the portal open, allowing his crewmates to flee the world. But before he himself could join them, the wizard saw the portal, his one gateway to freedom, close. Urza, who was waiting on Mercadia beyond the portal, was not willing to risk the Predator following the Weatherlight, and so forced the gate shut. This simple act of pragmatism doomed Ertai, who was left stranded on Wrath, where he was soon after captured by Grevin, the captain of the Predator. Even as a captive, Ertai displayed surprising bravado and arrogance, his pride not abandoning him even when he was placed in the hands of the Phyrexian overseer, Belb. This attitude, combined with the wizard's own skills, both in magic and harnessing the flowstone of wrath, actually managed to impress the overseer, who took a liking to Ertai. This liking soon turned to love, and the pair became quite close. As a result, Ertai was selected as one of the candidates to replace the missing Volrath as Evankar, alongside Grevin and fellow former Weatherlight member Krovax. Belb worked behind the scenes, secretly hoping that Ertai would be the one to ascend, but the young wizard knew that even with his impressive skills, he was no match for the might of Krovax. As the trials went on, and Krovax neared victory, however, Volrath would return, and Belb declared that the two must fight to the death for the right to rule Wrath. While he watched these powerful warriors battle, Ertai weighed his odds. Should Krovax win, he would be a brutal lord, but earning favor was possible. Volrath, meanwhile, was a dismissive and cruel tyrant, one who would have no qualms with killing Ertai. Furthermore, while Volrath was more skilled than Krovax, the vampire's powers allowed him to use the life force of bystanders to fight back with intense ferocity, and Ertai saw this loss of life as a great waste. Making his decision, Ertai used his magic to interfere with Volrath, securing a win for Krovax and earning the wizard some favor from the vampire. Unfortunately for Ertai, this small victory itself came with tragedy of its own. Shortly after Krovax's victory, Belb would be slain by the elf lord Eladamri, who was the father of the elf used to make her. Eladamri poisoned Belb, then took her portal to flee to Dominaria. With Belb dead, and Eladamri having taken his one possible route off of Wrath, Ertai truly gave in to despair, submitting himself to Phyrexia. On the day of Krovax's coronation, a lavish funeral was held for Belb, who was honored as the overseer of the stronghold. When the flames of her pyre finally died out, Ertai, now transformed into a four-armed Phyrexian, retrieved the skull of his love, a token to remember her by. As the planar overlay commenced and the Phyrexian invasion began, Ertai operated as Krovax's mage and right-hand man. When the Predator once again engaged with the Weatherlight over the skies of Dominaria, Ertai was present and used his magic to teleport Gerard, as well as Squee by accident, into the stronghold, before Krovax. Gerard and Krovax fought briefly, but the champion of the Bloodlines Project was convinced to surrender himself to Phyrexia, just like Krovax and Ertai. As a reward for this success, Squee was rendered immortal and handed to Krovax as a prize, and the vampire took great pleasure in murdering the goblin repeatedly. Sometime later, while Krovax was out fighting the enemies of Phyrexia, Gerard returned to the stronghold, carrying the head of Urza, and having rejected Yawgmoth's offer. Ertai called Krovax back, allowing the Evankar to battle Gerard once again, and, while the two fought, the wizard occupied his time in the only way he knew how, sadistically slaughtering Squee. Ertai's torment of the goblin went on for some time, repeatedly killing the creature, not paying attention to much else. This little distraction proved to be a mistake, however, as Ertai was, in the end, slain by the goblin. Not through any grand display of skill, of course, but purely by accident. In his confusion, Squee had stumbled about and accidentally overloaded the mana infuser, which Ertai was using to heal. A light filled the room, so bright that Squee could still see through his closed eyelids. When the dim returned, the only thing left of Ertai were his ashes. So far, Ertai has had 2 cards representing him in the game. Ertai, Wizard Adept from Exodus, and Ertai the Corrupted from Planeshift. Both cards showcase his skill as a wizard well, allowing you to pay a cost and tap him to counter any spell. Ertai the Corrupted, interestingly, has 2 different arts. I don't know where this one comes from, but it is pricey! Like many characters from the Weatherlight saga, Ertai is very dead, and as such is unlikely to reappear anytime soon. However, WotC has printed new cards for several members of the crew. Who knows, maybe Ertai is on the list. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like or sharing this video with your friends. If you're a fan of the Weatherlight, its crew, or the Weatherlight saga as a whole, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. I'll be releasing more videos on this topic. Finally, this video is brought to you by my patrons. If you enjoy my work and would like to support me, head on over to my Patreon. A link to it will be in the description below. Thanks again, and have a great day. If I had $1 for every member of the Weatherlight crew that was turned into a Phyrexian, I'd have $2, which isn't much, but it's weird that it's happened twice.